Hi friends, and welcome to my weekly stream about the Uno platform and live coding what's happening in the Uno platform. My name is Jérôme Laban. I am the CTO of the Uno platform open source project that you can find on GitHub. I spend about an hour or so every week on Tuesdays taking a look at features that have been released on Uno, or taking a look at newer features that we're developing, and doing deep dives into the features that we're developing. For the past few weeks, I've been developing a new feature inside the Uno playground, and which is about adding C# to the playground. So all the inner works about what it takes to have a compiler running inside of the browser, adding NuGet packages like we did last week, and this week taking a look at what we can do to add source generators inside of the playground. It's something that we've been developing as part of additional project around Uno platform, and that's something that we're going to be taking a look. But first, we're going to be taking a look at the announcement that we made last week, which is the release of the Uno platform 4.2 with a lot of goodies and performance improvements and the support for .NET 6 Mobile RC1. And that's quite interesting because we've been deep diving into all things performance, and that's one of the things that people have been asking us a lot. And with all the new features that have been added recently inside of the with .NET Mobile, and especially the fact that you can actually profile something with a .NET 6, which was not easily possible before. And let's say we have a documentation about this. If you search for profiling, I think we have a .NET 6 profiling, or maybe performance. Let's see, Uno UI performance. I think it's there. We have a section at the bottom. So if you don't know about this document, it's all sorts of documentation for about performance and things that we're suggesting to do when you're developing an Uno application. But there's the one specific that's particularly interesting is the profiling of documentation. I see that we have a link error here. So profiling application, profiling Uno platform applications. There you go. So that document. So that document is particularly interesting because it gives a set of instructions to be able to profile Xamarin Android and Xamarin iOS applications. So for Android specifically, there's a few things to set inside of your application, and it allows to use the speed scope application that's available, and it's particularly interesting. I don't have a trace here to show right now, but it gives a lot of information so that we were able to profile the Android applications and add some quite welcome improvement for Android. And we have more coming because lots of things have been happening as part on our end when we're profiling Uno, but as part also as part of the framework itself, because the .NET team has been working pretty hard on making the application go faster, especially on Android, but also on iOS. There are a few things that we've found this week with regards to performance on .NET 6, especially one particularly interesting. I think we can go Xamarin Mac iOS, and I'm diverging a little bit on that one, but it's particularly important. Let's say GitHub Xamarin iOS. I opened an issue last week, which was something that's happening when you're profiling an application. There's a method that's called Xamarin get frame length, and that method is called during inner loops, and it makes your application pretty much go 25 times slower. So that's not good. So that's the kind of improvements that we're looking for inside of .NET. So the .NET team is pretty interested in those kind of updates because they're looking at performance in general. So with the .NET 6 RC1 mobile support, so because Microsoft has released a new version of .NET 6, it's the RC1 and RC2 coming up pretty soon, I would guess. And that release is particularly important because it's a stable one, meaning that any new version that's coming up starting from RC1 is going to be binary compatible. And that means that the libraries that have been built using RC1 including the ones that are coming from Uno, are going to be compatible with the stable version of .NET 6 mobile support for iOS, Android, Catalyst, and macOS, and tvOS. But for now, we don't have that support yet because it's not something that we've been looking at yet. So if you have something that's of interest for tvOS, let us know. So as always, you use UnoCheck. We've been making many modifications for UnoCheck to make sure that it works properly with the RC1. The only thing to consider is that if you have installed UnoCheck previously and you had a previous version of Visual Studio running on your machine and you already had run UnoCheck, you may have to install and run that command manually after you've installed and run UnoCheck. It's for some reason there are a few things that are misaligned when you're upgrading to the newer version of Visual Studio on Windows, so it may require you to run that specific method, that specific command. We've made also a few additional improvements, especially with regards to Preview 4 support, and one that people have been asking quite a bit, and that's the support for being able to see to have Intellisense running inside of Visual Studio. And I can actually show you that one real quick. So let's create a new project using .NET 6. I think I do have the Uno templates installed on that instance. Let's take a look. If not, I'll probably make that change to run with a different version of Visual Studio. Hey, Magnets, thanks for joining. You're becoming a regular. Thank you. So let's create a .NET 6 application here. Let's call it Intellisense update. And let's do this for now. And the important thing here is that in previous versions of Visual Studio and with the changes that we were making inside of Uno, basically when you were opening a file inside of say you're inside of Visual Studio here, and you open, let's say, your shared file, so let's say main page here. The problem was that here you couldn't do something like this, and you wouldn't have access to all the extensions that are available as part of Intellisense, and that was causing a lot of trouble. So because you were basically having the issue where if you were closing a tag like this, then you wouldn't have the auto formatting that you would have seen, and then you would have the cursor going up to the top here, and that was pretty annoying. So that's one of the things that we got fixed in that updated version of Uno. So that's one of the first thing that is interesting. The other thing that's interesting is that it's the actual Intellisense that goes to the Uno binaries. So if I take any property that's here, you can see here that it says accessibility heading, and if I say, so that one is probably, I don't know if it's a native one, but let's say, so that one actually comes from Mono Android. So if you take a look, it's directly on android.views.view, and it's a property that's actually specific to Android, and it means that Intellisense is providing you the properties that are coming specifically from the Android specific methods and properties. So that's pretty nice. It also works for event handlers, which was not working before. So now if you go, well, navigating does not work, but if you create a new one, it does work. So if you go back to the code behind, now you do have access to the property that's the method that was created as part of the event handler for the tapped event here. So that's pretty nice. It improves the navigation. Same thing goes for the others. WASM was not supported, now it is. So there are a few things that are still not there yet. So for instance, there's the fact that theme resources are not resolved yet. And if you're going here, it's not going to give you anything. It's something that we're working on to get the hooks to be able to provide those kind of information. It's not something the Visual Studio exposes yet, but we'll see in the future if something can improve there. So let us know if there's something that doesn't match for you, but it sure is an improvement from the previous versions of Visual Studio. Another one that we've done is the new Skia GTK OpenGL renderer, and that one is particularly interesting because it makes for faster application using Skia GTK, and especially with regards to large application on large screens. So for instance, I'm streaming on a 4K screen, and the interesting thing is that from that particular screen, rendering the full screen was taking about 250 milliseconds on my machine, which is actually pretty large. And the reason for this is that the renderer for Skia that we were using for GTK was the software one, and it basically renders pixel with the CPU, and it's pretty slow. It's pretty compatible with everything, but it's not super fast. And with the use of OpenGL, now it goes down to about 2 to 3 milliseconds, which is a nice improvement. So that means that you don't spend it makes animations more fluid and faster. You're consuming less resources and things. And the only thing is that it's not yet working for macOS. It's something that we're taking a look at. It seems that GTK for some reason is not rendering OpenGL surfaces properly. So we'll take a look at those in the future. So with the performance updates, DOM manipulations, and we've done CalDBD has been working on this for a while, and we're improving everything that goes along with layout, arrange, and measure passes, so that we do less modification to the DOM when we're rendering the content on iOS when we're rendering the content in WebAssembly. So that makes for a nice update in performance. Same thing goes for the measure path caching for Android. So if you have an Android application, it will have a good performance improvement there. We've made a few additional updates. People were asking about being able to bind to static events using Xbind, elevated view, a few other things like message dialogue for Wasm and Skia. We didn't have support for message dialogue on Wasm and Skia before. It was just small pop-ups at the top. It was not particularly nice. So that's something that we have changed for Uno 4.2. Now you can style your message dialogue to whatever you want, and it looks a lot better than it used to. And also one that was interesting is the incremental loading support for list view for Skia and WebAssembly. And if you're loading lots of data, that's something that you may want to use, to fill up your list views in large sources. And of course, lots of contributors that have added interesting features to Uno. Okay, so let's go back to the playground. So I've done something quickly to be able to do to actually have something that looks better. I've changed the Monaco editor so that it works on multiple editors at the same time. So we're going to take a look at that. So this is something that's not published yet. It's only in a branch. So what I'm going to be doing is modifying the current version of the Monaco editor that I'm using instead of for the Uno Playground, so that we can actually test this one. It's going to look better than the one that we have right now, which is not using Monaco. So it's a text block. So let's take a look at this. So currently I'm using the version. I'm using Monaco editor. Where is it? It's a 1.1.0, and the file is located here. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be overriding the local cache with my custom version, and hopefully it should give us the ability to have multiple Monaco editors at the same time. So that I've done. Now let's go back to the Intellisense, to the XAML file, and we're going to be modifying our code box that was here with an actual code editor instead, and we'll see what that does and if it actually works properly, because last time it was not particularly interesting. So no, it was not that one. So we're talking about with a source pane, we get the XAML pane. Yeah, okay, so that was the code editor. Okay, so if I take this and replace, what we want is a source code box instead. We're calling that the C# pane. The language is C#. And that should be looking good. So if I remove this, just making sure that we have the alignment set properly. We have the vertical alignment as well. And we're going to see if we have something that looks good now. Okay, so if you haven't looked at the previous streams where I was taking a look at this, being able to run C# in the playground, you should be able to see this pretty quickly. So what did I break this time? Okay, so it says XAML language provider does not provide a few things. Okay, so it's a newer version of the XAML language provider, and there's a few things that were changed. So that means that we have a few breaking changes that were there. Cannot implement because it doesn't reply with the right type. It's completion list, but the method is provide completion items async. Okay, so it looks like the method is not the right one. So we have iModel, position, and completion context. And we're supposed to be returning something different, but it looks like the properties have changed. So the task, a completion list. It's an async operator. Ah, okay, so I changed it to a task. That's why. Okay, so that's probably something that I'm gonna have to change, but so I took upstream changes that are coming from the original version of the Monaco editor, and needed to make a few additional changes for that to work, but it looks like I changed too much. So I broke the API. Okay, so there's something else that is changed. So it says resolve completion item async is not the same. It uses iModel, iCompletion item. Okay, so there's one less parameter there. And it's not implemented yet, but it doesn't matter that much. We're going to make those method async as well. And return just item for now. And for this one, it's also an async method, but we should be able to return nothing, just a completion item directly. That should be good enough. Well, that's new. Probably not that useful to get some code completion. Okay, so let's start again. Okay, so that works. Okay, so we don't have text change because the property is not the same. So source code box is now a code editor. And I would guess that it's likely to be property change and not text change, because text change is not there. It's not available on this. Changed. No, it's only property change. Okay, so we can do just property change and use property change as well, because it's the same kind of changes that we're doing on both. And there's text change. Okay, doesn't use any kind of properties that are coming from here, so we can just run there. So okay, so what the change, so we took the original text box that we were using previously to use a Monaco editor, so the properties are not the same. And what we want is that when we change some text, we want the editor to update itself properly. So we're going to be taking a look at this. Okay. So we don't have, okay, still it doesn't look like it's working properly. So unless I've broken something, we have C# that's there, but it's replacing the XAML one, so it's not good. So it looks like it's still broken. So I'm gonna have to update those later. Unless I didn't write something correctly in here, but it looks like it's supposed to be doing the right thing. XAML pane, C# pane. Yeah, definitely not good. Okay, so let's revert this. Probably going to have something for next week. Okay, let's revert in here as well. So we're using the original version of the package. So now, because I modified the package manually, I'm going to delete the version so that it gets updated properly. So my guess would be that because I have the application running, it's probably going to be locking the file because of the debugger. So let's see, can I delete it again? No, still not working. So I'm probably going to have to remove additional. I'm going to have to close Visual Studio. And I closed the folder, which is not good. So let's do it again. We have the playground. So if I go to the NuGet folder again, Monaco editor. No, it's still locked. Interesting. So there's probably another process that's looking at the file that shouldn't, unless it's because I loaded the solution too early. It's because I loaded the solution. Okay, so that's why. So I loaded the solution, closing it back. Now I can load it again, and let's take a look. So now what I want to do is being able to, let's say, inside of my application, the code that I have in there, in the playground, I want to be able to, let's say, run some kind of code, some kind of library that uses some source generator. So for instance, we can have some with, let me make sure that it's the right one. I can find that one out. So one that's interesting is refit. And refit is using, so we got this piece of code, that's good. Okay, so last week what we did is provide the ability to load the NuGet packages. So what we're going to do this time is update all this to have some source generation available. So let's go take a look at the refit documentation. And let's use a small version of this to have, let's say, the GitHub API, and we're going to be using this. I don't know if we can probably be able to have some unauthenticated calls. So you're going to be trying this, and we'll see. So what's interesting about this version of refit is that it uses code generation that so that methods like these are working properly, and you get your code running in the right with the right behavior. Previously, they were using T4 templates, and they changed that to use the all new source generators that are part of Roslyn. And because we're using Roslyn, the full Roslyn instead of Uno and in the playground, we should be able to use the same code that's there. So let's actually do something like this, and we're going to be writing that code inside here. So let's write a small method, and we're going to be putting all those things here. So we have our GitHub API. We said we have to have a namespace. So I'm just going to be putting it right at the top here. And we have our GitHub API here. What do I have? So I'm missing a method. So we have get here that's not available. So to do this, we need to be adding the right namespaces. And I don't know about those namespaces. So let's assume that it's refit, but we'll see right after. Let's see if it's refit. No, it's not refit. Okay, so we're gonna make a small application on the side because I don't know about those APIs, and without Intellisense, it's a bit difficult. So let's make this on the side for now. Let's hopefully, in a few months, when the applications move forward farther, we're gonna be having all those IntelliSense hints coming up inside of the playground instead of just having to guess on the side. Okay, so I want to have refit here, and to have refit, we need to include the NuGet package that's called refit. And I don't know if we can get it from here. Sometimes it says no, it doesn't do it. So let's add it from here. So we have the right set of NuGet packages that need to be included. Okay, so we have refit. Probably going to be having to add the others, but we'll see. Okay, so we have refit. So it's exactly using refit, which is good. And so the syntax we used last time, if you remember, was that if we take a look in the share project here, we had a compiler, which I don't remember where I put it. String style selector, not here. I don't remember where I put it, so let's go find it out in the samples. Oh, there it is, compiler. Okay, so we had a specific syntax to use. So it's ref, the package name, and the version. Okay, so it will be ref refit at, and the version would be the version I'm using here, which is 632. Okay, so it's refit here. I don't have a user. Let's take that from their sample if there's one. No, there's no user, so we're probably gonna have to add one by hand. I don't know the name, so let's create one for now. Just call user, and it's going to be let's call it user for now. I don't know if that's going to be the right type, so we're going to figure this out by looking at the APIs. Non-nullable property, so it's a nullable property here. Probably going to be having to disable this because I don't have that enabled on the other side. So let's disable this for now because we don't have it enabled. So it's not user, so just call it username or name. Let's call it name for now. This builds. So let's say if we take all this and put it inside the playground, does it compile? My guess is that it should be. So we're going to be taking the rest as well. Sorry, let's take all of it. Let's take all of it and put it here so that we have something that we can copy and paste more easily. Okay, so we have refit to use. We have the Windows XAML controls to use as well. So that is not working, but it's expected. We should be using this instead. The grid is good. We have the GitHub API. We have the user, so that we can remove. Okay, you should be able to copy and paste this to the playground. Okay, so it says task is not found because we don't have the global usings here. Let's add the missing namespace. Okay, so it compiles. We have the hello that we put here, so it works properly. Now, what we want to have is a method that actually invokes that API. So to do this, we need to create a method. So in this case, you're going to make a naked method, and let's call do stuff. Actually, I said I would have to put this in the other Visual Studio so it's easier. Okay, so we have Visual Studio and we're gonna do stuff in here. So do stuff would be the AutoCAD API. And that's probably it. So we have our AutoCAD here. And what we can do is show something in the UI with our text block. Actually, let's call it TB. And easier. With our text block. And so it's set here. And once we have a result, we should be able to set its text to the result of the user. So maybe it's not going to be the right thing. So let's say that for now, name is the right property that we should be getting, but maybe it's not. So let's see what we get. Okay, so we're missing a semicolon. Okay, so we have our hello, and we're still not invoking this. So it's working properly. At least it's compiling properly. So now what we want to know is this going to work properly without having source generation available? And it's actually something we can take a look at with refit directly and see if we should be having some source generators as part of the NuGet package. Okay, so we can see here that we have two sets of generators. And I think we're still going to be having some trouble because there is some magic involved at runtime, at compile time, because of the multi-targeting of analyzers. Okay, so probably going to be doing it manually for now. I took refit because I thought it was interesting as part of a source generators that was the one, but they're using some new fancy things with the interface stub generator that we don't have for Roslyn 4. And I think the reason they use Roslyn 4 in that context is because they're using the new incremental APIs that are part of Roslyn for C#10, and maybe we could use them, but we're going to be hard coding something for that Roslyn or the first version of the analyzer for now, to see if it gets interesting. So let's see if we execute this, what that does do. What does this do? And it does nothing, it looks like. So we have an error here that says stack panel does not exist. So that one is interesting. I'm not too sure why it would say that, but it says stack panel does not exist. Root element is missing. It's likely that it's because we have something broken with the lookups that we're using to get to the playground, or maybe we're missing some root elements there. So it could be that I changed the loader for the playground a bit too aggressively. So let's see. We have update. So we're loading some C# here. We're getting some XAML. The XAML input, is it the right one? I would guess it is. Yeah, it's wrapping a grid here, but for some reason it's not returning the right thing. So what we can do, and one of the reasons we had issues before was that we were trying to get types that are part of the other namespace, and we still haven't made the change yet. We can actually. So it's probably part of the loader. It's something that changed between last week and this week, because it looks like grid is trying to be looked at from an invalid namespace. So probably missing something there. Let's see. If I take a look at the playground, The base is grid presentation. So if I take this directly, do we have the right namespace? I wonder. Yeah, it looks like for some reason, the text that's coming from here is not the right one. Ah, that's probably because there's text here. That's something that I changed previously. Okay, that explains it. Okay, so let's take the grid here, and that's something that we had last week. And so the thing that we need to do is invoke the code that's from my control. So we need the additional namespace. Let's call it test. And we're using the namespace that is called test because it's available as part of the file here. And we're looking for my control. So we want to have test.mycontrol. My control does not exist, but my control without a smaller case works properly. Okay, so we have hello, which is good. We have refit being loaded. We have not too many diagnostics. Because this call is not awaited, the execution will complete. So that's good. But for some reason, this fails. So it's probably making it's probably creating an exception that is not displayed. So let's display this. And let's display the exception. And we have, what do we have? We have consoles missing, which is missing. And it says exception does not exist. So should probably add using system at the top. Gotta make the code easier to read. Okay, so now we have iGitHub API doesn't look like a refit interface. So that's good. So that makes sense. It's a piece of code that we, it doesn't work because the source generators have not been executed. So that means that we're not getting anything that's behind the implementation of that iGitHub API. So this time we're going to take, we're going to be adding support for the source generators and see if that works properly. And the assumption is that it does, but well, maybe there are some things that are different there. So let's see what we can get there. So as I said, the generators, there's something specific to this because we can't add too many of the generators, and there are too many of them. They're using some fancy tricks here because there are 2 generators available, so we're just gonna take one. We're gonna make a specific case for refit for now because we can't guess all those things. So we got the package assembly, we got the path, and we're probably going to be having to add additional things here. So let's make a record for this. That we're calling package assemblies. And the first one is going to be a list of string. Actually, that's a record, so we don't need to do this. So we had a list of assemblies, and then we have a list of strings again, but this time it's going to be analyzers. And that should be enough. So assemblies and analyzers. And we're going to have to find and return those those properly. So in here we have the assemblies for the first one, and the second one has to be a list of analyzers. So for this one, we're just going to be looking for that file specifically, and then we can make some adjustments afterwards. So it's the interface stub generator v1. We're going to search for that file in the list for now. So let's say if base path contains refit, we're going to search explicitly like this for now. And we're going to search within ignore case. Then we're going to be searching for that file specifically. So we have one generator, and it's going to be directory.get files from the base path. So it's going to be a path then combine. So all the analyzers are located in a specific folder that's called analyzers. As you can see here in the folder, it's a convention that is for NuGet packages. So we're going to be trying to find that v1 specifically. And so the files from that folder, and the filter is going to be .dll. Actually, we could probably use that one specifically. And we're going to get the files and first or default. And we also need a list of string. And if there's a generator, let's add it to the list. Now that we will be having our list of generators, so let's when we have found it, we log it, and then once we're done, we have to provide that to the compiler to get to the right list. So in here, we have the assemblies, and we also need another list, which is analyzers. Okay. And once we have it, we should be able to run everything else there. So NuGet package. We have a set of, so we're returning a set of portable executable references. So that's interesting, but it's probably not not the whole thing that we need. So if we take a look at the compiler, we have add references, but we also have add, there's probably a way to get analyzers there. So that's not references here. It's probably another way to give those to the compiler. So let's try to find that out here. So is there a way to provide analyzers here? Analyzers. No. Doesn't look there's a way to provide those here. There's source reference resolver. It's probably having another name. With main module. So it's supposed to be with something. a strong name, metadata, source reference, diagnostics, platform, module names, script class names. That one I didn't know. Delay signed. No, it's not there. Got the usings, crypto. What's up above? There's so many options for the compiler. It's amazing. Module name, optimization, crypto, diagnostics, source reference, resolvers. We have the compilation options with the usings. No, it's not this. That's interesting. So it looks like I'm missing an API where I can provide the list of files, but I don't find that. So maybe it's in another location. So we can specify syntax trees, references, options. I don't see analyzers here. Create analyzer driver. It's not what I want, but it looks nice though. That's interesting. I don't know where that one where that one can be used. It was supposed to be available somewhere. So let's take a look. We have a contributor that did a nice PR recently that does exactly this. So maybe we can find this somewhere. And being able to find so run generators and get diagnostics. So that PR contains some interesting things. And being able to run pieces of code with analyzer. So maybe there's the option that we need here. So we have references, we have in syntax trees, we have C# generator driver. Ah, that's why. Ah, that's interesting. Okay, so we need to create a generator driver first and then provide. Okay, so it's kind of an augmented compilation. So that's interesting. Okay, so let's do this. Probably going to be doing something around it here. But what I'm going to do is, because it requires a bit more changing, I want to change the topic a little bit. So it varies a little bit. We're going to be taking a look at an additional issue that we had previously. Okay, so I still have the portable executable references. So we're going to be returning this for next time. And I'm going to be putting this here for next week, so we can take a look at how to run this properly. We'll probably we'll have it done already. Okay, so that's the second part of the stream. Now let's take a look at the third part, which is taking a look at one issue that was opened in the in Uno, which is the double animation on canvas top and left is not working. So someone reported this and tried to get something running with Uno, and there was that interesting animation. If I take this playground link, we should be seeing that the ball that is defined, or the circle that's defined here, should be bouncing. It should be moving a little bit, because the canvas top and canvas left was supposed to have been set. And the reason we do know that the storyboard is actually working is because the discrete keyframe here is set to a specific value. And if I change this to 0.2, for instance, you'll see that the circle is going away. So that's why we do know that it is working properly. So now the reason that what we want to know is why does this not work properly? and that we don't have the updated double animation so that the blue canvas is updated properly. So we're going to be making an additional application so we can test this. And let's create a new one. And what we're going to do is enable some logging to see if there's something that's missing or an exception that should be happening and that's not happening, or maybe there's a problem with the canvas or something else because it should be updating the value but is not. So that's something that we can take a look at. So wasm double animation test. So let's go and try to troubleshoot this and see where we have an issue. So we can put the code that we had in the playground in the page directly. The one thing that we need to change is the fact that the storyboard is not supposed to be, cannot be invoked like this. So we have to change it to change its location. So let's put it in the page.resources. And one of the reasons we need to use this, I've lost the battery. That's interesting. That's going to be much better. One of the things that we do use is that when you're in the playground, you can't run a storyboard because you have to execute something on it. And that's why we're using that small behavior that's there that automatically executes the storyboard by hand, but it's not something that we are going to be using for now. So on this one, we're going to be using actual code behind, which is going to make it easier. And let's create a method. And we're going to be starting the storyboard manually. The storyboard that was written here. So it's STB. We're going to do STB dot, I think it starts, if I remember correctly. So one of the things that we can try first is, does it work on UWP? That's the main thing to do. And if it does not work, that's probably something that, so it's not start, it's probably begin. Yeah, it's begin. Okay. So let's see if it actually does what it's supposed to do. Okay, so we can see that the ball is bouncing around because it's reversing and making the right thing. So that's good. So that means it works properly. So now let's go take a look at, let's say, Skia GTK, for instance. Does it do the same thing? Okay, so we have the issue that we mentioned last time, which is the fact that we have a bit of DPI awareness issue. So it doesn't work on Skia as well, which is good in a sense. And I probably should be changing this so that it looks better. Surface render type, we're going to be putting software for now so that it looks better. Okay, so it changes the opacity, which is good, but it doesn't change anything else. So let's try to figure out what's happening there. So if we go and try to enable a few additional filters, for instance, we have the visual state group, for instance, that we can take a look at. So if we enable this, we should be having a bit more logging that shows up. So, oh, forgot, we need to change also the information level. And we'll display the right thing. And we can see now there are more things like go to state. So we're actually going to state, and we can see that it says, so on button on canvas. So state is interesting, but that's not the state that we're looking for. It's actually the timeline. So for timeline, we're going to be searching for timeline in a storyboard, and I don't remember the namespace. So it's Windows UI XAML Media. So we're going to be navigating to this namespace and adding a filter for that namespace specifically. So let's go and enable this here. So we can remove the visual state group instead. Okay, so if I start again, oh, you can see that there are many things that are happening already. But if I click here, I do have the ellipse that's actually been set. You can see the bouncing ball here that's set to the opacity to 0.2. But do we see anything else? So we got the visibility here with some solid color brush changes. But I don't see anything that's related to canvas. So that may be the issue. We're not finding the right properties to set to. Okay, so we have something interesting. So that means that when we're trying to get the double animation running, the target property here is not resolved at all. Could be an invalid resolution, could be something different. So we're going to be trying to get to the bottom of this. So when we start with the debugger, there's that new feature from the Visual Studio that allows to browse the source that are coming from Uno. So let's find the source that we need. Assuming that we have modules without source. So Uno doesn't have the source here, which is interesting. So let's see, maybe let's use another one. I thought that one was working, so it looks like it's not loading the sources properly. Let's see with WPF if we have something better. Okay, so we don't have the sources for Uno for some reason. No symbols loaded that contain information loaded. Okay, so maybe it's because it's manually disabled. Okay, so let's go and load the sources for Uno. There you go. Okay, so it worked. So it looks like it's disabled by default. It looks like it's probably a new feature of Preview 4 because previously it was loading everything from the start. So we need to go to the media, and we're going to need to find timeline. So timeline is going to be in animation. And in timeline, we have a way to set properties in specific locations. So for instance, we have set element name target and things like that. So that's the kind of properties that determine where to get what. So we have element name. So you get target name and target property. So if we search for target property, so we search for the target property here, and then we try to find the path directly. So maybe it's something that's in there that's not parsing the path properly. So let's try to debug this directly. So for some reason the breakpoints are not hitting. It's probably because I have just my code enabled. So let's go and disable just my code. That's probably why the files were not loaded previously. Okay, so see, now I have the red dot that's showing up. So let's restart the application and see if we can hit that location specifically. So I'm probably going to be hitting it before. I'm going to have to disable the breakpoint so I don't hit that too much. Oh, that's okay. Okay, so let's see if I do start. I hit the target. Okay, so I do have a property path that is background, but it's not the one that I want. Not background. Not background. So let me put this here. Oh, background. Foreground multiple times, I would guess. background again. There's quite a few of them. Okay, so it's probably doing a bit too much here. So let me see. Okay, if I click, it's doing a little bit better. So we got border brush, we get visibility, foreground, canvas. Okay, so that's the one that we're looking for. And that I don't need. Okay, so we're looking for top canvas top. So now that property needs to be resolved. For our XAML here, so that it matches to bouncing ball, which is the object that is here. So it needs to find canvas.top and top and left on that object so that it works properly. So maybe there's something that doesn't work well there. So we don't have a property info, and now we're going to be trying to build that path and get some value here. So we're trying to parse the path and get a value. So we have, I don't know what that is, but we're going to figure out. Property length. Okay, so looks like for some reason, because the files are not loaded properly, the getting into, because I got the play here, but it's going to data context change. It's missing part of the path. That's interesting. Okay, so let's get out for now and see what we have inside. So property info should be having some interesting information. And let's see. So here, cannot obtain has been optimized away. So not particularly interesting. We're in debug. So maybe it's caused by the fact that we don't have local sources. If it continues to fail like this, we're going to have to do something different. Okay, so it's not useful. Okay, so to work around this, we have to override the Uno version, and we're going to be adding a newer version of Uno here. We're going to be compiling a specific version of Uno so that we can debug it properly locally, because the files that are coming from NuGet are not giving us the right information. We have 426, but we should be having more packages. NuGet is being dizzy. Okay, so it's giving us what we need. Okay, so we need to update Uno, all the Uno 2.6 packages to a preview build so that we can override them locally. So there you go. So let's open some Uno solution. And we're going to be upgrading this to be able to debug the sources directly and not have to try to figure out what's happening to the other one. Okay, so we're using Uno 4.3 dev 7. Just going to be removing what I have here. Oh, actually, it was useful. So it was some assembly load context XAML reader. And it's a work in progress. Okay, so let's go back to the master for now. And we need some recent sources. Okay, so what you see here is that I changed the target framework, and I also have changed the Uno NuGet override version so that when I build the Skia updated binaries, I'm gonna get an override for that specific version. And to do this, we need to override one specific project, and it's the Uno UI Skia runtime GTK. So this is listed in the documentation. So if you want to do it by yourself, just follow our documentation with contributing to Uno. And what that does is when the build happens, it overrides the files that are at that location, so that if you have an application that uses those files, then you're gonna be using the newer version as well. And so you're going to be able to debug it properly without having to fiddle around with all the things that are related to debug builds and things of that nature. So we got Uno UI Skia. And so once it's done, it's going to give us a debuggable build, and we're not going to have to spend too much time troubleshooting this. Okay, so let me close the other ones. Actually, it's not particularly useful. It's taking a bit of time to build today. Probably just the first build. Okay, good. Now let's go back to our sample. Let's do a rebuild so we do have the right sources at the right location. And let's debug again. So we should be able to drill down into that property now that we're done. So that file doesn't exist anymore, but it's not the right one. So we need to find one that's located inside of Uno. So our local sources for Uno. So that one is actually different. And let's do it like this. So we take the path of that file, we open it in here, and then we can find target property again. Oh, the breakpoint is at the right location, so probably match the file somehow, so that's good. Okay, so let's start. So the property that we're looking for here is background. It's not that one, it's canvas. Visibility, foreground again, canvas. Okay, so now we have to go inside of binding path to determine if, see, now we can actually go inside and not be mixed up in all the inlining and things that the runtime is doing as a result. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is determine the binding change. So when we're parsing, what is the value that we're getting? So the path is actually controls canvas.top, and we have a binding item that's returned. The property really is canvas.top, and the chain is supposed to be something that looks like this. So the property name, the first property name is canvas.top. So that looks okay for now. So we have a value change listener that's set to itself, which is fine. It's not particularly useful here. And we're also setting a data context, and that's where we're getting all the bindings that need to be happening, and all the property matching that need to be happening to ensure that we're getting the right value. So let's take a look. In the property info, what do we get? Oh, actually, I had that already. So it says, what does it say? Oh, So we got errors already, but it's probably not what we think it is. Okay, so that's just an Intellisense error. So it says double value type. That's the right one. We have the path that's available already. So the path is good. The data item, data context is good. But we have the value set to 0, which is fine as well. So that should be, I mean, it's the right property. So it's set to 0. What we don't know now is if the newer value that needs to be set is actually set properly. And when we took a look at the logs, we didn't see that the property was updated properly. So that's where we're missing something. So now we're gonna have to find out where that value is set and why it's not being set properly. So there's probably a set value that needs to happen. We can see here that set value is invoked here, but it looks like it was not called because it's not this one is not logged. So we're probably missing something with the double animation not happening or not being executed properly. So let's go take a look at double animation. And see if there's something that's not working there. We have an animator. So double animation, we have a double animation that's Kia that doesn't do anything. And we have something that is called animation implementation. That's something that that was done by the team so that we have the right implementation, because sometimes some animations can be done by the GPU or sometimes they need to be done by the CPU, and that's where we do the switch between the two. So in there we have things that are called value animators and things like that. And one animator that we need to take a look at is called the CPU bound animator. And that's the one that we want to look at. And it's probably one that is not doing the right, it's not doing the right thing. So let's see. Are we stopping here? Let's see if we do stop here for now. So here was on frame. So every time there's something that changes in the UI, it's supposed to go through that on frame, and the value is going to be updated once something changes. So let's see if we end up here. So the property info is doing what it's supposed to be doing, but we can see here that it's still not doing anything. So that's particularly interesting. Let's go and take a look at the double animation specifically. Maybe there's something in double animation that we're not seeing, and that's not initializing properly. So we have in double animation is probably a begin. Let's see if we go through this one. Okay, so we're in there. So we can see the property info is the right one for that location. So we can see that the property being manipulated by the timeline is actually the double animation that we're looking for. But for some reason, it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Okay, so we have subscriptions. We had a play. Let's go and see what the play does. So we're doing lots of things in here. We're computing the end value, which is supposed to be 250, which is good. We're creating an animator with a 0 and 250, so that it does what so that it goes to the end. And the animator that we're creating is a dispatcher double animator, sorry. And we got the get updated value with some easing that's supposed to be happening. So we can do this. Get CPU bound animator value. So this is supposed to be called. We got animator report each frame. So we can put a breakpoint in there as well. Let's see what happens. So we're beginning the other one, we're beginning the left, and nothing happens. Okay, so we're not even beginning anything in the double animation. So the beginning of the double animation is doing something, but the begin here is not doing anything. So definitely missing something pretty big in here. Ah, there you go. So we have don't start animator if it's a dependent. Don't start the animator. It's a dependent animation. Okay, so it could be something that's related to this. If the dependent animation is not enabled. So let's see. Maybe that's the issue that we're looking for. So if we go back to our main page and we change the animation to say true. Same thing for the other one. Do we have something updating? Maybe this time. Ah, we do have something updating. Well, it's not doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing because there's no reverse. And we can see that there's actually another issue that's related to this. Because it's supposed to be bouncing back at the bottom. Well, it looks like I'm jamming a bit too much. We could probably disable the logging here. It's jamming the UI. Okay, so it's actually doing something better, but now it's not bouncing back. So it's probably because we don't have the support for bouncing. It's something that we haven't implemented yet, if I remember correctly. So that means that the auto reverse here is supposed to be happening, but it's not happening. So that's why we're not having the animation go back. Let's take a look at the WebAssembly implementation and see if we can determine what's not happening properly here. So does it work with WebAssembly? Okay, it does. It's fading the same way because the auto reverse is not implemented properly, but it's better. Okay, so the one thing that is to know with the implementation that we're having currently is that especially for Skia, most of the animation are still happening on the dispatcher thread. It's the current implementation that we have, and that's the notion of dependent animation. When we're saying independent and dependent, it means that if you're animating something that is interacting with the layout, like changing the width or the height of a control, then that's going to be a dependent animation. It's going to be impacting the UI thread explicitly. So it's not going to, it may slow down the application. There's the notion of independent animation, and that goes to the compositor thread. The implementation that we have currently doesn't have that compositor that compositor thread, so there's no notion of independent animation. Now, there is on iOS and Android, but there's nothing like this on Skia and WebAssembly at this point. Something we're going to be implementing in the future. Now, the question is, should we force this to be true on platforms that don't support independent animation? And that's going to be a question that I have to ask someone from the team, because I'm not sure exactly what the answer will be at this point. But we do have a workaround, and that makes it particularly interesting, because basically when you set this property to true, it starts to work. And if we go back to the playground, I think we're going to be able to see that working. We do the same thing to the second one. Well, it doesn't show here for some reason. So enable independent animation is not doing, maybe something that we changed in between, because it's supposed to be doing the animation, but for some reason it's not doing it here in the playground. Probably another issue that we need to take a look at, because it's not doing It's not doing the right thing here. Enable dependent. Could be something that we fixed. Or it could be that the storyboard is not executing properly at that point, and it's not running the right thing. So it could be something that we fixed in a later version of Uno. Okay, so we have taken a look at what we can do to troubleshoot this and understand the chain of modified components that need to, or a chain of components that need to happen during the execution of the double animation. It looks like the enable dependent animation set to true is enough for the animation to go forward properly. So that's it. At least we got a bug fix somehow. We moved forward a little bit with the C# in the Uno playground. There's a little bit things that need to be adjusted for the generators to run. That's one of the learnings of today. There's a need of you create a compilation and then you create a source generator based off of this. So that's one of the things that I learned today. And that's it. So I hope you learned a bunch again. I say this every time, but that's mostly always the case. I try to learn some new things when we're doing the stream. So I hope you had some interesting time, and I hope to see you next week. Until then, happy coding, and bye for now.